Today is an important day for the Clarks. After 10 months, Miss Clark is finally going to give birth to her child. Everybody in the region knows Mr. Clark of all the Clarks, that famous, serious jungle judge that lives here. After a few hours, a nurse delivering the child walks out of the room with an awkward expression on her face and goes to Mr. Clark's office to see him. Mr. Clark? The nurse then looks at him with a shocking expression under her face. Yes, what is it? Mr. Clark takes a look at the panicking woman and he frowns. You might want to see it yourself, Mr. Clark. What is it that needs me to go and take a look at? Why not tell me now? Well, your child seems to be a bit special. The two arrives at the room where Mrs. Clark is taking a rest. She's lying on her own bed next to her and Mrs. Clark's child. Mr. Clark notices the other people who helped her with birthing also seems to be embarrassed. When he walks up to the child, he sees the child, and instantly the expression on Mr. Clark's face becomes more shocked than that of everyone else's. The child is a girl, but her hair is the color of blonde, unlike her parents. Mrs. Clark is red while Mr. Clark is brown. The most surprising thing, however, is that the girl has a pair of terrifying eyes. Her eyes are all black, the pupil of white of an eye. Pure black? What monstrosity creature is that? Mr. Clark shouts furiously. Nobody talks back. Suddenly Mr. Clark grabs the still resting thing, Miss Clark. You didn't mess with the other people, did you? Or can you give them birth, such monster? Mrs. Clark is very weak right now, Mr. Clark, please. Like I care about it. Mr. Clark throws her back to the bed. Tell my lawyer to come here, concludes Mr. Clark as he leaves the room. A few days later, Mr. Clark's lawyer, Taylor, arrives. Mr. Clark, about your daughter, she certainly is your daughter without the doubt of the DNA test does not go wrong. In the slightest tests, how show your eye is slight normal. The doctor even say that he's never seen her in a cast like this. Her eyeballs are black, but she has no problem in her eyesight. In fact, her eyesight is 2 times of a normal person's. Taylor, standing right in front of Mr. Clark's desk, hands him a stack of documents on the girl's information. But she's a monster. She's not perfect. What is a perfect child? Mr. Clark says without even taking a glance at the documents. Then what should we do? Hand her to the orphanage? Taylor asks. No, that would affect people's impression on me. Even if that's the case, then I shall not let her go to school. I will recruit tutors to teach her. Don't let anyone see her. Also tell the nurses who helped her deliver the child, do not tell anyone about this. This is a very bad issue to our family. Mr. Clark closes the book and looks at Taylor. If you're an accident that happens, just finish her off. She is a failure, after all. Years later, Dina Angela, the extraordinary girl, is now 13 years old. She doesn't like to talk, possibly due to she was locked up in the mansion all her life by her father, therefore became anti-socialized. Dina knows that her father is a very famous judge, and that he does things very fairly. Always look at things from a neutral point of view. However, he always seeks perfection on everything, which is why he has a very bad relationship with Dina, despite knowing that her mother and father were never so well to each other before she was even born. It can't be changed. Both of their parents decide that the marriage themselves at the time. Dina has never stepped outside before of her eyes. She gets herself a mirror and looks at her very eyes. They are pure black, but looking closely, she actually sees little sparks in them, like small galaxy. She is often fascinated when looking into their own eyes. Her blonde hair is just short and messy, but she usually has them brushed whenever her father is around, although it's usually her mother who brushes them. So for Mrs. Clark, she never cared much of how Dina looks. She is always on her daughter's side, always thinking of her. Of course, she always knows that her husband, who does not like Dina at all, is up too. Dina doesn't have many friends. Her father has been imprisoning her all her life, and even though the house is really huge, she still feels very lonely. She used to have thoughts on making a friend on certain boy, but it seems impossible in this situation. Currently, the only person that supports her is her mother, Mrs. Clark, so she really adores her. Dina really thinks about those things, and she watches the kids play around them and from her car window. Suddenly, someone knocks on Dina's room door. "Come in!" Miss Clark comes in and says, "Dina, I'll be going to the department store later. Do you want me to buy anything for you?" Miss Clark says while she looks at Dina, "No thanks. But dear, you haven't been eating anything recently, and you seem to get thinner than before. I'll buy you something to eat later." Miss Clark left the room before Dina even stopped her. "I told you, I don't want it." Despite saying no, Dina actually tries to something from outside. Clothes, food, everything not interesting for her now. She wants to try something from the outside world, but no, Dina knows ever since that she was born, a maid was employed by my family. Her name is Masha, and her job is to take care of Dina. But the maid's job is actually, in fact, to be Mr. Clark's bodyguard. He spent a lot of money to recruit this woman, and who's loads of criminal records, to prevent Dina from causing trouble, as well as to protect him. After all, who knows what Dina will do to him? Thinking at this point, Dina giggles through, "If I can, I would want to kill him." It will be Christmas Day in a few days, but Dina isn't exactly happy about it, since she always spent Christmas as if it wasn't a normal day for her. It doesn't matter whatever she celebrated or not. Unfortunately, whenever it's her birthday, Miss Clark would always prepare a small cake to celebrate with her. If she hadn't done so, Dina would have forgotten how old she is. Since there won't be having any tutoring today, let's do what I usually do, Dina thinks. She stands up from her bed, leaves the room, and starts wandering around the house. Even though Mr. Clark locked her up in the house, he never said anything about not letting her walk around the house. But it's a good thing the house is large, and that the family is pretty much the richest in the region. But Dina isn't complicated just because of that. Also, Dina utterly is disgusted by the arrogant ones who cares for her pride. Dina always visits Mr. Clark's collection room, even though he strictly forbids Dina to enter that room. She will always sneak into it. In fact, that room she can't say for a long time, because there is something that finally catches her eye, a pure white sword that is placed in a glass case and is isolated from the other collections, as if it's something really special. Whenever Dina gets close to the sword, it creates a soundless resonance, and that sword would always shines in the silvery white color. Dina would stand for hours to watch that sword. According to her mother, according to her legend, the sword was originally belonged to an angel. And during a war, the angel accidentally dropped the sword into the human world and was never found by the angel again. However, since then, the humans of the world began using it for different reasons. It was once to kill, to protect, for personal benefits, etc. Thus, this sword was passed down like this for so many, many years. There is also a rumor about the sword considering one who builds a good relationship with the master of eternity. Such beautiful sword, if only if you're mine. Dina's black eyes reflect on the image of the sword. She places her hands onto the glass case and feels as if she was getting sucked in. Suddenly she hears footsteps coming from the clothes, so she hides herself. The door opens, and someone comes in. It was Masha. She was doing her regular patrolling. It was obvious that she was looking for Dina, since Dina left the room without permission. To have Dina's action restricted this badly, she stares at the maid with a hateful look. Dina then comes out from where she was hiding, soon as Masha leaves the room. In the evening, Mrs. Clark returns home with lots of things she bought from the department store. Almost all of them are daily supplies. Unfortunately, she meets Mr. Clark, who doesn't show up often, at the front door. "What did you buy?" Mr. Clark says. He grabs Miss Clark's arm as he asks for her. Some of the items Miss Clark bought fell out, including some food that she had brought secretly. "Why didn't you buy this food? It's for our monster, isn't it? How dare you buy these things? Secretly!" Filled with fury, Mr. Clark pushes Miss Clark on the floor, but before he kicks his helpless wife, Dina comes in and blocks her heartless father. Father, what in the world are you doing? You have no right to call me father, you monster. The most perfect ones can call me that. Mr. Clark slaps Dina, bouncing her to the side. She stands up from the floor and glares at her father before she says, and leaves the room. After making sure that Mr. Clark has left, Dina goes up to Mrs. Clark and asks, Mother, are you all right? Don't worry, I'm okay. I'm quite unlucky today. How about you, dear? I'm fine, but didn't I tell you not to buy them for me? If Dad sees it, it doesn't matter, since you're my only daughter. Mrs. Clark touches Dina's face gently before she says, Let's sleep together tonight, Dina. The truth is, Mrs. Clark cannot escape her husband's bind, even if she wanted to. She has thought of divorcing, thought of it, but she can't give up on Dina. And even with the divorce, if it was successful, it was likely that Mr. Clark would not let them go for good. Mother! Miss Clark sits on the bed, while Dina lies down on her mother's lap. Yes? Miss Clark touches Dina's hair softly. Mother, do you hate me? My eyes? Dina looks at her mother with her pure black eyes. Of course not. Mother really likes your unique eyes. You're my angel, after all. Angel? Dina suddenly remembers the sword in the collection room. Mother, do you still want to escape from this home? Yes, I've always wanted to. Then let's run away together. Dina sits up. Let's leave this place. Then we'll find somewhere where no one will ever find in to live in. Dina holds her mother's hand. But Dina, your father is a famous person, and he knows a lot of people. So if it was to find us, we'd definitely be in a very bad situation. Miss Clark says as she lowers her head, But Mother, do you really want to live under father's harsh treatment? You and I both know one day I will be finished off by my father, so let's escape this place before that happens. Dina's eyes filled with flames of passionate feelings, and her mother sees Dina's passion. She holds Dina's hand and says, All right. Seeing her mother determined to do too, Dina says, Then we'll run away on Christmas Eve. I've prepared the plan already. Dina then tells Mr. Clark about her plan until sunrise. Time flies, and the day of Christmas Eve has come. Dina and Miss Clark will be escaping the house today. This house is no longer their home. But hell, the master of the home is a judge, and he is the law. Anyone who goes against him will no longer live on. Dina has been waiting for this day. She has prepared everything, and now she just needs to wait for the evening to come. She overlooks her watch. It is now 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it's time. Dina then takes out her pendant, and it was a photo pendant. She brought it secretly by sneaking out from the house into a newly opened antique shop near the house. The shop sells many different kinds of things, including the pendant. Since sneaking out while always wearing a disguise, she always thought people wouldn't notice her. Anyway, she is now going to give that pendant to her beloved mother. Suddenly, Dina's room slams open. Miss Clark is covered in blood, running in. Run, Dina! Before Dina could react, Mr. Clark punches Miss Clark from behind the wall and walks towards Dina and grabs her, and she shouts, You damn monster! I will kill you! How dare you sneak out? Do you even know that because of what you've done? Someone had taken the photo claiming that a black-eyed monster has entered our house. I thought it was something else, but right now our front yard is crowded with news reporters. Right after he concludes, he throws Dina to the side, Dina being thrown by her father as her head hit the edge of the table and loses its consciousness. When Deanna regains consciousness, she notices that the floor is freezing cold and the air feels quite moist. It seems that she is in the dungeon. Mr. Clark has an interest of the medieval cultures. Therefore, he built this dungeon in this house. Now that I think about it, father's taste really disgusts me. Dina thinks she can stand up and wanders around the place. It seemed to be the only exit out of the dungeon door. There is nothing there, and despite Dina's body being very slim, it was not very possible for her to escape through the metal bars. Suddenly, Dina hears someone coming towards her. She stares at the person closely in the room. Hey, little monster. How does it feel being in here? The footstep came from Masha, the hateful woman. I knew your plans from the very beginning, and that's why I sent the photos of you outside to your news reporters guy, ugly one. Masha then looks at Dina with a despicable look. You beastly girl. Oh, but aren't you the same? Are you also being controlled here by my father, aren't you? Forced to depend on my father because of that, you damn woman? You are no different than a monster. You thought I didn't know that you seduced my father every night, didn't you? Dina looks at Masha, laughing. You bitch. You bitch. Dina then repeats nonstop. Then Masha, irritated, opens the dungeon door, gives her a few punches until she coughs up the blood. Enough, you freaking monster! Your father told me I can always finish you however I want. Masha shouts as she stomps on Dina's head. That's enough. Splurt. Dina, who is still being stomped on, starts giggling creepily. Dina laughs hysterically as she opens her eyes widely. No! Dina grabs Masha's ankle tightly as she screams. You're the one who should be punished, is you! Dina stands up with her, and while her hand still holding onto Masha's ankle. She hits the woman in the knee, and her other hand, the most insane power, instantly reflexing Masha's knee. The pain caused Masha to scream in tears. Then Dina sits onto Masha and slaps her a few times and she laughs. You bitch! Scream, you bitch! Haha. Dina then starts to strangle Masha. You shouldn't provoke me. You should never provoke an angel. Masha struggles continuously as she grabs Dina's tightly, and scratches her arm to the point of saving her skin scratched off. But Dina does not feel anything because she knows that the person in front of her has to be punished. That's right, Masha. I knew all along what you've done, and I've always known about. So I need to judge you, Masha Quest. Dina's face approaches Masha's. Her large eyes stare at the woman, and the woman looks back, terrified look. What have you done? Cannot escape from an angel's eyes. I now announce you're... Dina strangles Masha even harder as she whispers to the woman's ears. Guilty. Dina tightens up her grip as Masha's eye turned white. Now everything was quiet. After making sure that Masha wasn't breathing anymore, Dina stands up excitedly and says, Phew, I killed someone. Dina laughs hysterically as she hugs herself because she was finally done something she always wanted to do. It's time for more trials. Dina immediately switches back to her serious personality. She arrives at the collection room and walks towards the glass case, looking at the sword inside the case with a cold look. It's time. Come. Even though she had said she would leave this place, but she has changed her plans. She will finish this once and for all, and leave this place along with her mother. About a half an hour later, Dina, covered in blood, arrives at Mr. Clark's office. Father. She opens the office doors slowly, but slowly sees no sign of her father. However, just before she's about to leave, she sees someone lying on the floor. Just as when she can see the person clearly, she cries, Mother! Dina runs towards her mother, holds her up, and her mother's covered in wounds, and is stabbed with a knife. She is no longer breathing. No, Mother! Nothing's left of her. Even her beloved mother is gone. Dina cries and hugs her mother, but then she noticed a reflection on the sword. Someone is approaching her. She recognizes him. When the person comes close, Dina suddenly grabs the sword and slashes at the person, making him fall. Hello, Father. One of the Clark's legs is chopped off. Mr. Clark crawls on the ground, trying to escape, but Dina stops him by stepping on the wound where his leg was chopped off. Ah! Mr. Clark shouts, Father, I thought you were gone. It really troubled me if you were. Dina then says as she stabs her father in the stomach with the sword. She stabs, making her father exclusively bleed. What's going on, Father? Aren't you strong all the time? How can you slowly get low by a monster? Dina's eyes are filled with crazy and murderous thoughts. You know, it feels so nice to judge and sentence people. Maybe I'll become a great judge someday. Dina swings her sword. Judge? Like hell will a monster become a judge. A judge is a is a suitable one who is fair and perfect. Mr. Clark pants. Dina then points a sword at her father and says, Then there are things you have done ever by the fairest? Ha ha ha! I am way better than you. Way too much. Dina stabs her father harshly every time she says a word. His organs flew out of him, and then they are either being minced or mashed by Dina. Mr. Clark, suffering from a severe injury and exclusive bleeding, glares at Dina and shouts, You monster! Monster? No. I am an angel that is born to punish you. Dina raises her sword. Danny Clark, I announce you are guilty. Dina slashes with her sword, chopping off her father's head before he has time to react. The man's body collapses, his head and falls to the ground. Dina picks up her father's head, talking by the looks of it. Father, I knew everything, and what you have done so far is all being seen with my eyes, even if you don't treat me like a normal human. Dina then throws in the head of the burning earth. For some reason, Dina notices that the blood is boiling and that she adores everything she's done. That's right, she now considers everything reasonable. She grabs the sword tightly, shaking in her hands and shivering at the same time. She has lost her mind. Dina puts her mother's corpse into a suitcase. Don't worry, Mother, I will find a nice place to bury you. Dina says as her mother's corpse as she gently touches her mother's hair. Dina changes her clothes into a white one, which now shows her white complexion. Then she prepared herself for the sword, which is creating resemblance to something expression the joy for Dina. Is that so? That's right. I am now your master. I am an angel. I have every right to decide whatever people live or get killed by me. Dina swings the sword as she talks to the sword, and then she leaves the house with a heavy suitcase and walks down the forest. She looks at the burning mansion before she steps into the forest. She smiles with satisfaction and then disappears into the forest. There was a fire at the Clark's mansion that night. Then when the policemen arrived and the firefighters arrived, they discovered large amounts of dead, decapitated corpses. The policemen suspected most of the corpses were the servants of the Clarks. Of course, they also found Mr. Clark's body with his head burnt to the skull. Discovered by the hearth, Mrs. Clark's body was not found, but was also suspected to be dead, as they found her blood in Mr. Clark's office. Taylor, Mr. Clark's lawyer, was also found dead when the fire started. He also died from decapitation. Mr. Clark's neighbor was also questioned, whether the family left and had a child or not. All of them answered no. No data shows the Clarks had a child, either. 1 month later. Good morning. This is David Starter here at the Morning News. It seems that a few people witnessed sword-wielding girl White last night. Let's talk to some of the witnesses about the incident. She's an angel. I saw her wings. She's dead. She's carrying a white ghost. She is here to judge us. She's going to take our lives. A man who is watching the news laughed right in front of the TV and says, angels. It must have been a lie and made up some stupid people. Like hellgates exist in this world. He walks into the dark alley in smoke, and just before he puts a cigarette in his mouth, he is pushed onto the wall by someone. Using the very dim lighting, when he sees a white girl, Wait! Can you be? The man struggles as he speaks, but the girl cuts right before the mid-sentence. Shh! You need to be quiet during a trial. Now how dare you defy an angel? Because of this, I now announce you.